the slideshow I've got. Elon Musk had the last laugh with regards to the e-commissioner, Anthony Albanese's e-safety commissar, as Elon Musk put it. Basically, the lawsuit's been dropped now, and Elon's, this obviously all blew up early on a couple of months ago. You guys might remember when Bishop Murray, friend of the show, was actually stabbed, and unfortunately, that was on the live stream, so a lot of people were traumatized by that. But then the Safety Commissioner, not getting her way in banning it from all Australian users, even VPN users, tried to mandate the whole world not see that, an actual crime taking place. And Elon's, guy's from South Africa. He's got a libertarian streak in him. I've had a soft spot for Elon for a very long time. Craig, you didn't mince words with this.
Look, let's take it from the start. Firstly, if you thought this e-safety commissioner should ban the video and people shouldn't see it, the way she carried on actually gave it what he called the Streisand effect that made more people want to watch it.
Yeah.
So she's had exactly the opposite effect of even if you're on her side, right? Secondly, there's the absurd court case that she ran. They were basically running the argument that here in Australia, we have the ability to censor the internet on a global scale. That was what she was arguing in court. It was a complete nonsense. Yeah. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars she spent on this court case, right? Finally, I'm sure her lawyer would have said, look, this is pathetic. We can't possibly win this. We're wasting money. So she pulled the pin after going after Musk. As a likely disgruntled Twitter employee as well. Yeah. I have called for her to be sacked. She's completely out of control in what she's doing, right? But unfortunately, I saw Peter Dutton the other day in Parliament praising her, and I saw David Coleman, the coalition spokesman on communications, also praising her. It's though they're frightened to criticise her. This is a highly paid government bureaucrat, completely out of control. And we saw, I don't know if you might have that video later that you saw her, where she was, I think, at one of the Davos conferences.
All right, missed that.
And they asked her, they said, do you think what about freedom of speech? And she said, no, she said and the Fourth Amendment. She said the First Amendment in the US. She said, no, the First Amendment doesn't apply in Australia. I get to decide, sort of thing.
She did decide because when the day before we had a Westfield massacre, and it was all over social media, I saw what looked to be a dead body in Chanel, and that was all good. That was okay. I mean, I found that was more disturbing. So how do you pick and choose? I mean, who gives her the power to be the decider of truth, the decider of what people see?
This has been the problem with every single attempt to censor free speech, and this isn't a new problem. I was part of the campaign against the then Prime Minister Julia Gillard's News Media Council, a thing that was proposed by the Judge Finkelstein in his report, and she really wanted, Prime Minister Gillard really wanted to push this through. She really wanted the power for the government to decide what the news media were and were not allowed to say. And the point that I made, and many others made as well, I was a small part of a very big campaign to push back on that, was according to whom? The minute we say you're only allowed to say what's true, well, true according to whom? I mean, we have entire court cases because there are two people who are absolutely sincere in their belief that they are right and the other person is wrong. We used to have, back when free speech was a thing, universities where incredible minds who understood the intricate details of incredibly complex but also relatively scientifically verifiable topics would come to loggerheads and they would duke it out of their different ideas. If you can't even come to an agreement on something that's scientific like that about who's right and who's wrong, well, who gets to be the arbiter of things that are much more nebulous?
The Stalinist Russia was like that. Mm-hmm. My parents were from there. My mother truly believed that Stalin was her father.
Wow.
This was the indoctrination. I mean, we're heading down that pathway as well. Julie Inman Grant, I just don't understand why she needs to be paid over $400,000 a year.
And on top of that, the idea that the bishop didn't even want it to be taken down either. He said, no, look, any attempt to use my tragedy where I was stabbed in the neck multiple times, and thankfully, by the grace of God, he's still with us, that you were trying to censor the world. I mean, who do you think you are? He actually wrote a statutory declaration in Elon Musk's defense, saying, no, the video should stay up. Any attempts to use this is reprehensible, basically. It didn't fall down long after that. And let's not forget, everyone else around the world that's watching this, the dictators, maybe some even more left governments, New Zealand, who knows? Like, New Zealand's a lot better now, better government ever since October, but they might get ideas too, and they might start censoring the world on hate speech with regards to whatever, and that's what I'm worried about.
Also, this is just the start. Remember, we've still got this mis and disinformation bill coming before the Parliament. So where we are at the moment, you say we've gone completely too far in the wrong direction. We should be actually trying to protect free speech to make sure that these big social media platforms actually act as platforms, not publishers, and censoring stuff. Like I'm still banned from Facebook. A life ban from Facebook. I can't even get a page back up, right? We had, during the COVID period, we found out through Freedom of Information, I had both the Health Department and the Department of Home Affairs writing to Twitter trying to censor me. So there I was, a sitting member of Parliament, putting speeches up from the parliamentary speeches, and we had government bureaucrats behind the scenes secretly trying to censor what I was saying. And that's the direction these people want to head us in. So not only should this Julian Grant should be sacked, we should actually completely abandon this mis and disinformation bill. And we should be going in the complete opposite direction, where I say we should have a simple rule. If you can say something, if it's lawful to say something in the town square, standing on a soapbox, it should be unlawful for a social media platform to censor it.
And before I forget, when you were censored, let's not forget there were no violations on your Instagram.
Right, none.
There was no violations on your second Facebook page, and they banned you from a Linktree, which doesn't even post things. And the last thing I'll say on this is you actually asked the Speaker of the House. They are in contempt of Parliament. Can you do something?
Well, don't get me started on the Speaker. That was one of the greatest betrayals of parliamentary Westminster parliamentary history. The Speaker is there to protect the free speech of the Parliament. Now, what he did, I took a complaint to the Speaker and said, we cannot allow these large foreign social media platforms to be censoring the proceedings of federal Parliament. That's what they did to both George Christensen and myself. We had someone overseas in Twitter and Facebook and YouTube looking what was being said in the Australian Parliament, right, in the debates in the Australian Parliament, and saying, no, we don't think that should be done, and they were cancelling it. And the Speaker of the House should have stood up for free speech, but he didn't. He rolled over and supported.
Like, if that's not foreign interference, I don't know what foreign interference is. Like, we're talking about
where are
Russia.
the fact checkers? Where are they located? I mean, even to this day, we've got fact checkers putting up little messages of spreader of misinformation, disinformation. You are missing context. I mean, really, and. What context are you missing when you're actually stating studies and facts, true and perfect studies and facts?
And this is actually really important. Coming back to what Craig said, I don't think it's actually enough for us to demand that Julian Grant loses her job. I think that the actual entire department should be abolished, and whoever approved the creation of the department should either be fired, or if they're an elected politician, sent back to the backbench and unable to hold a ministry. We've actually got to push back beyond the point of just setting things back to where they ought to be. One last thing on that quickly. I got an email from the Australian Associated Press the other day because I did an interview with a funeral director in Sydney. And she said that her experience of what she was seeing before her eyes was that she went from burying one infant a month to 4 per week in the last 2 years or so. And she has her theories as to why that might be. They got in touch with me and had the gall to demand the source information, by which they meant studies or published something that I could send them a link to, for this woman who's worked in the industry for decades, expressing her lived experience of what she was seeing before her eyes. And I cracked it. And I should actually post my reply publicly. I basically wrote back and said, who do you think you are? That you're going to sit there with your computer and do some Googling, and you are going to stand as the arbiter over this woman who is speaking in her area of expertise where she's been working for decades. How dare you spare me? And by the way, you might want to start reading your contracts, because as lawsuits begin where people have been harmed because of the misinformation that was allowed by these companies, or harmed because of the true information that was suppressed by these companies, lawsuits are going to come. And you might want to have a look at your contract and figure out whether you might bear some liability. I'll update you when I get a reply to that one.
That's an interesting story. I had a similar experience with Dr. Zelenko. You may remember Dr. Zelenko did a video to President Trump, said, President Trump, I think I've got a solution to the COVID problem. And he laid out his prescription with hydroxychloroquine and gave out how he's having success with it, right? I looked at that. Someone sent it to me. I looked at it. I thought, now, before I reposted it, I checked, okay, is there a Dr. Zelenko? Is this in New York? He had the Hasidic beard. Is this correct? I looked at it and found it and said, yes, okay. I was happy to press send, right? A couple of days later, I got a call from a journalist at the ABC demanding that I apologise for posting false information. I said, hang on a minute. How can you say it's false information? Oh, Facebook decided that it was. And I said, can't you see you're missing the story? The story is, here we have a doctor giving his real life experience on what he's seeing and what he's doing as far as COVID, right? With the potential treatment, and someone at Twitter that is not a medical expert has decided that doctor is not only wrong, but should be censored. And the ABC didn't get it. It was all about we've got to censor, stick to the narrative.
Yep.
This is why we read. I think the legislation we need should be in the opposite direction, and that is to protect free speech. You talk about the E-Safety Commissioner, the only thing that the E-Safety Commissioner should be do is when it comes to protecting children from pedophilia. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
We don't need her to do that.
No.
We've got other people who can do that. That's I'm sorry, that's a waste of, like I said, $400 and whatever $1,000 that we pay her a year, because she's got a godlike complex, as we know. She's been nicknamed E. Karen for a very, very good reason, because there's not a lot of intelligence going on there. We really don't need her. Yes, we don't need pedophilia, that's for sure, but she's not the one that needs to be deciding that.
And Australia's like we're the laughing stock of the world. I mean, not only
100%.
are we no longer associated, you know, with Crocodile Dundee and all of those tough things. You know, we're meant to be the toughest country in the world, easygoing, Aussie larrikin spirit, and they're just ruining it again with this. And she's not even fully Aussie, is she? She wasn't born here.
Dual citizen.
Was she born here?
No, she's got a dual citizenship. She's got an American and Australian citizenship. So I don't even know why she's in this position.
My opinion is, if our senators can't have dual citizenships, neither should our. If you can have that much power. I mean, wasn't it a Liberal that brought this person in?
Absolutely. I think we had him on earlier, Malcolm Turnbull. He was there. Right? Oh, there's a great video of him saying, "Oh yes, I've recruited this, Julian Grant. Isn't it wonderful?" Sort of thing.
Isn't that what happens all the time? The Liberals bring it in, and the Labor kind of
right. But
force it.
What was interesting? One of you talk about being an Australian. One of her comments that she made was often, it's these little comments they make that is the giveaway. She said, "This is something that the Australians shouldn't see." Right? There she was, basically putting the Australians as someone she's above, and she should be dictating to us like children how we should see it.
It makes me sick. Look, before I forget, the last graphic I'll bring up on this topic is how much Australia is censored across the world versus other countries on TikTok. As you can see, Australia is the number one amount of accounts that are actually nuked from 2022 to 2023. This is disgusting from what I can see. I mean, are there any dictatorships? Supposedly Russia gets less people nuked than Australia.
Can I share a story on this?
Please.
So during all the madness down in Melbourne, we ended up with a protest in front of the Shrine of Remembrance. Not my choice of location, but we ended up there because the armoured car was driving up and down Elizabeth Street, and the riot police and the anti-terror police were shooting rubber bullets at people. We ended up there, and of course we had the shameful scenes of the police lining up, firing squad style, and just shooting at protesters at the shrine with their rubber bullets. Shortly before that happened, Rukshan was there doing coverage. Rukshan, big shout out to Rukshan, amazing guy. And he points the camera at me. He says, "Topher, talk to me. What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, thanks for the heads up, mate." And I just simply said what was happening. I said, we didn't want to come back to the Shrine of Remembrance. It's hallowed ground, but we felt we had no choice, and we had to come back here. When we're being shot at with rubber bullets and chased by the anti-terror police, we had to come back here and appeal to our ancestors and appeal to the freedoms that they fought for and that they won for us. And that video went viral, and someone quickly grabbed it out of Rukshan's feed and stuck it up on TikTok. And my niece, who I won't name, she found it on TikTok, and she got in touch with my wife. She said, "Oh, Topher's on TikTok," and sent the link. And then all of a sudden, that link stopped working. So she went and she found some other, because it was getting shared all over the place, she found some other ones. And before her eyes, she was watching them working and then gone. She was literally in TikTok at the time, finding my videos as they were disappearing off there. And that completely changed her life because she'd seen the censorship happening in front of her eyes. It changed her whole perspective on life.
Makes me sick. You know, when I was trying to get John Ruddock elected, or even in the Victorian election, state election, the RMIT Fact Lab and, Australian Associated Press, it's almost as though they timed their fact checks to drop right when the Turning Point Australia How to Vote cards came out. It's like, you guys are directly impacted because they get money from overseas organizations, right? Like the George Soros, Open Society Foundation, a lot of these fact-checking ones. I'm not sure about RMIT Fact Lab and Australian Associated Press, but the idea that they're going to do that and then, call it democracy, let the voters decide. Let the voters decide and go from there.
Here lies the whole problem of all these, whether they be RMIT, the TGA. All this is conflict of interest. Who's funding them? They are following whoever's giving them the money. I mean, the best statement is follow the money. And when you follow the money, you find out who's actually dictating to these bureaucrats, and they are bureaucrats, who are forcing us to do the things we don't want to do or censoring us.
Yeah. a day of reckoning is going to come on this. Did you guys have anything else to say on this topic?
I just think we've got to go back. We do need legislation to prevent these social media companies from censoring what is otherwise free speech and what would otherwise be lawful to say in the town square. They have taken over what was effective, the old debating town square. They now have monopolised it in a way, right? Now, if they're going to put censorship controls, imagine on the old town square if someone got up and said something that the government didn't like and the police hooked him away and put tape around his mask and threw him off and said, mate, you're not allowed back into coming to the town square to give your opinions. That's effectively what's happening today.
Yeah.
Now, we need, they should be treated as common carriers, that they must not be allowed, especially when it's political speech, to censor it. We've got to get back, if we're going to improve society, it's got to get back to the old-fashioned way, the contest of ideas.
Absolutely.
And you learn where people put forward an idea that's bad, you actually benefit from that because it gives you the opportunity to rethink through your thought processes. This idea that everything should be censored, we disagree with, is a very, very dangerous slope that we're going on.
Yeah, I think all of these things, they're just being done to basically demoralize us, especially the grassroots. If they can demoralize you, a bit like, China intimidating Taiwan, different topic, but then they can actually force you into a surrender without even actually fighting the battle and getting both sides bloodied. It kind of but this is the thing. I have so much faith in people. You guys all, you meet amazing people around the country, Craig and Natalie and Topher, and the energy's got to go somewhere, and it's going to often come up and pop up in ways that you don't expect. I have so much faith in people in the way that they come up with these ideas and the way we get behind them. It kind of reminds me of that line in Star Wars with Governor Tarkin and Princess Leia, where she says, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. I just think that I have so much faith in the Australian people with regards to coming together. They voted against the Voice. I mean, they don't like what this establishment has done through that COVID period, and they have a lot of regrets. Going